Afternoon, guys.
Afternoon, Ed. How are you doing today, my friend?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How about you?
Not too bad. I think a Wednesday, decent day in the fiat mines. Can't complain. What they're doing is listening to Preston Fish's latest podcast while kind of just working away on some odds and ends. The interview with Obi from Fetty.
Oh, okay. I didn't check that out yet. I'll have to put that on the to-do list.
Definitely worth a listen. About halfway through right now, and it's funny because some of the questions I had about Fetty, they answered like in passing right at the beginning. So the identity aspect of it, because I know we were talking about this the other day. The identity aspect of Fetty is being handled by Noster in the background there, but the chat is through Matrix.
Okay. That
Have
answers
you,
that question that we were we had the last space, right? Can you guys hear me?
I could hear you now.
How's it going, Neil?
Good. I can't hear the Bitcoin Mentor account if they're talking.
Yeah, I don't know if Nathan, we can't hear you if you're talking right now because I think you cut off in the middle of our conversation. He'll just drop back down and come back up.
All right, cool.
But how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy to be here.
Good, good. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming to talk, and maybe just start with a little introduction to yourself and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a link maybe I could share to the space just to like let people know? Hold on, let me just see really quick.
You should be able to. If not, just DM me and I will post it up here.
Let me share something really quick. Well, I meant to post it on my own what do you call it? Twitter feed or X feed.
Yeah, no worries.
I am back, by the way. I did get booted down and kind of had some glitches in the background, but it seems to be working now.
Yep, I hear you loud and clear.
So is that Nathan?
That is Neil, yeah. Thank you for coming and joining us today.
Yeah, sorry if I just doxed your name. I didn't know. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay.
It's funny. Like when we first started doing this, we had that like consideration, but we only got like one or two spaces in where it's like, yeah, everyone's just like, it's just Ed and Nathan. And we got Pat up here hanging out with us too. Pat, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Actually, yesterday there was a little bit of a funny misunderstanding because Brian was in here, or it wasn't yesterday; it was Monday, and he was saying hello to Nate, and Edward thought that he was talking to you, Nate, but there was a different Nate that was in the audience, beef for bacon, so he was referring to him, and then Ed was like, "No, it's actually Edward," but yeah,
I didn't even know
so,
that.
yeah, we all got real names here. What's going on, Neil? Good to see you, man. With FOMO21, love your apparel. I've bought several shirts from you. The porcupine shirt, the Bitcoin psychopath shirt. I'm a big fan of what you're doing, Neil.
I really appreciate it, Patrick. It's good to hear your voice. I haven't seen you in a while. I think Unconfiscatable might have been the last time. I'm not sure the last time I saw you, but it's been a while.
Yep. Yeah, because I didn't go to the Nashville conference. I'm guessing you were there.
I was. Yeah, it was a good time. I'm already looking forward to Vegas. I'm not going to be at Unconfiscatable Vegas. I'm going to be at Unconfiscatable that the Bitcoin conference is doing. Are you going to Unconfiscatable next month?
Yep, I will be there. I'm helping out Tone with the Scammy Awards, and if anybody here on stage or in the audience, if you come up with any good nominees for Scammies or any good categories, feel free to, let me know or DM them to me because I'm still putting together the Scammy Awards list.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to come, but my life right now is a little in flux, especially the next month or two, and plus the fact that the Bitcoin conference is doing their thing in Vegas. It's just not going to work out for me this year, but it's fun hanging out with all you guys. So it's good to see you.
Neil,
Likewise.
just kind of on that note too, is there anything you're currently working on or big plans for the future that you want to share with us? So this is all kind of hush hush right now.
So I was, I'm sure some of you know this, I was one of the people at Swan that got laid off. About half the people there were laid off. So that, yeah, sad faces. It's all good. One door closes, another door will open, and already have some good potential leads. But in the meantime, I'm one of the promoters for a lot of the major Bitcoin conferences. Like I said, Vegas coming up next year for the Bitcoin conference next May. I'm already looking forward to it. We've already sold a ton of tickets for that conference. If anyone's interested, promo code FOMO will get you a discount to that conference. So yeah, definitely check that out. Also, as some of you know, and as Patrick mentioned, I am the co-founder of FOMO21. So we do Bitcoin only merch and apparel. My business partner Ryan reached out to me a little over 2.5 years ago now about starting FOMO21. I'd never met him before. He was like, "Oh, I've been following you on Twitter, blah," and he'd been in the merch and apparel space for over 20 years doing sports merch and apparel. So he seemed legit, and he initially it was going to be I was going to do all the marketing and be the pretty face, and he was going to do all the day to day. But I ended up taking over most of the business. Ryan still is still involved, but I run most of the day to day of that as well, and it's been really fun. Um, I tell people I get to bring memes to real life, right? Like that's what we do. People get to put their favorite memes and sayings on Bitcoin t-shirts and wear them around. I know some people don't like to wear the Bitcoin symbol right on their chest or the word Bitcoin. So we have some OPSEC friendly stuff. We even have like an OPSEC collection on the site. And yeah, no, it's become like a passion / hobby / legit business. So it's, right now still it's growing. It's grown like quarter after quarter, and I'm really excited to see what the next year or two brings for it. So yeah, that's you could see in the top right, the blue logo FOMO21. That's our Twitter handle. No one's on it right now. I just like logged it in, but if would appreciate it. Anyone listening, if you give it a follow, we appreciate the support. And also, I set up a special discount code for the spaces. So if you use the code mentor, you will get 15% off today in the store. So it only works today. So if you're in here, appreciate you, and you will get 15% off mentor. So actually,
Thank you, Neil.
I'm gonna
yeah, go
Thank
for it.
you.
I'm gonna increase it to 20% for everyone in here. So
Oh, thanks, dude.
mentor, I just increased it. So there we go.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
appreciate that. And I apologize to anybody who's listening to this recording down the line. You've missed out on that sweet promo. I'm actually kind of curious. I'm looking at the store right now too. Neil, do you also do the graphic design then as well too? Or who's doing the artistic work? How is that kind of process happening in the background?
So yeah, I do all the graphic design. So when we first started, I knew nothing about graphic design 2.5 years ago, and we had like, so the way we started, we got a bunch of like designs that we like paid for that were like some like license where they just like give you 20 like generic Bitcoin designs, and then we hired a third party like contractor that we'd pay like once a month, and they'd be available to make designs whenever we needed them, which was okay when we got started. But for me, I wanted to be able to really capitalize on like current events and what was trending. And you give a concept to a graphic designer, they make it, it comes back, it's not exactly how you want it, you go back and forth, it ends up taking a few days, it sometimes it loses that fire. And I want to be able to put stuff out right away. So my business partner had a little graphic design knowledge, so he taught me a few things. And then a couple months later, I was really excelled doing it. So we got rid of the graphic designers that we were hiring as contractors. And now I do everything. So basically 95% of the designs I made. There are some from the very beginning that I didn't make. Some of them are, bestsellers. Some of the ones I've made are. So there are still some designs that I didn't make that we have on the site. But any new designs, it's either me or me with the help of some AI technology these days that I've been using a little more. But AI still, there's usually blemishes, and I usually have to do some like edit work to any of the art or sometimes I'll have the vision in my head and it's hard to translate it to have AI do it. So I'll just make the design. And yeah, so that's how it works.
Awesome.
That's the
Very
creative
cool.
process.
Very cool. Very cool. Just a reminder for anybody hanging out in the audience, if you do want to come up here and ask a question, or you got something you want to riff on, something to chat about, anything Bitcoin related, we'd love to have you here. Neil, I'm also kind of curious because I think I remember hearing from previous podcasts and things that you are a trained accountant. Is that correct?
Yeah, so my career is actually as a CPA. I don't hold myself out as a CPA really in the Bitcoin world, because then I have people DM me being like, "Oh, could you give me like tax advice on this and that?" And um, it's not that I don't like to help people; it's that I don't want to be on the hook for any tax advice I give anyone. And
Yeah.
also,
Yeah.
that's not how I see myself in the space. I like to be a creator, an educator, an advocate for Bitcoin, and the whole like tax compliance accounting thing is just it's. I mean, I can do it and I know it. I just it's not that amusing as you could imagine. It's not that much fun. It's kind of boring, to be
I was
honest.
there. Are you telling me that doing taxes is not fun? I mean, I've been misled this entire time. The reason I bring it up is because I'm kind of curious if FOMO21 was your first kind of venture into like entrepreneurial adventures. And for any like kind of budding Bitcoiner out there that might have an idea or they want to do a side hustle or start something up, I'm curious, 2 years now in this business and kind of really taking it over and building it up, if you had any insights or any advice for people.
Yeah, so I did have start a few other businesses throughout my life. They didn't end up like going there. Um, my advice in terms of the Bitcoin world is find good mentors. Like Bitcoin Mentor, people who have experience. Um, everyone in the a lot, not everyone, but most people in the Bitcoin world are willing to lend a helping hand if you need help with anything. I was really fortunate. My partner, who's a Bitcoiner, he's not public facing really in the space. I mean, he's not like Anon or anything, and he came to the Nashville conference, but he had so much uh, experience in the e-commerce world where I I didn't have that. And there's so many little things you need to know about starting specific businesses. So if you're getting into a business where you don't have a lot of experience, I would try to find someone that you trust and that's credible and has experience to kind of pick their brain. Um, don't try to do everything by yourself, and yeah, just be humble. You know, be humble, stack sats, be humble, build businesses,
Yep.
right? Know that it's a really long grind and a slow process. Um, this business, like a Bitcoin apparel, for example, you got to think about it. Some people might know our brand and know our name in the Bitcoin world, but in terms of like, if you look at the entire world, like how many people actually know and understand Bitcoin, right? Like really understand it like the way we do, where we would like come in a space and listen to it. That's like super small. And then the amount of people who would buy Bitcoin merch is super small because, as I said, some Bitcoiners, they don't want to wear Bitcoin merch. Some, are trying to reach certain stacking goals. They don't want to part with their sats, right? So whatever Bitcoin business you build, just try to think about your total addressable market and really be cognizant of that. You could have a great idea, but if you don't get it in front of the right people at the right time, it's not going to matter. So, a great thing about our business is we're very lean. We do everything print on demand. So we don't have like, a warehouse or inventory. So even during, we started during a bear market. So we were able to survive that, right? Because we didn't have like these high costs. And then during a bull market, you kind of reap the same benefits, and you could press on things, and it allows us stability during Bitcoin's volatile period. So that's another thing I would say. If you're starting a Bitcoin business, you really gotta be aware of how Bitcoin's volatility will affect you. and that it could last for years, right? We've seen like prolonged down periods where not as much people are in the space. So make sure you have um, an idea that could withstand those periods, or runway, capital that could withstand long periods. And just because Bitcoin did a certain thing in the past, doesn't mean it's going to do the same thing in the future. So don't get too tied into that as well. We hit an all-time high before the halving this time, right? So it already did something different. And now people are saying, I saw something during a bull market, there's never been two, I don't know if this is true, I saw someone tweet this out, but two like down quarters in a bull market. So that means maybe we're back in a bear market. It's right. Like no one knows. So make your business as anti-fragile as possible.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic advice. Yes. Thank you, Neil. Ed, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and I just wanted to tack on to that last thing you said. The Bitcoin space is notoriously unpredictable, and you have to be highly convicted. And to what you were saying earlier about, how many people really understand Bitcoin, how many people have that level of conviction that they can watch the price, you know, range trade for a year or two straight, no pumps, and see 80% drawdowns, all these things, it's not for the faint of heart. And if you don't understand what you're holding, you're going to be disappointed at some point, in the traditionally 4-year cycle. But like you said, anything can happen. And, it, famous last words is this time will be different. But it always surprises us, and that's part of the fun. And I think for those of us up here, I think we understand Bitcoin, and we're like, fully invested, and we're uh, not worried about the price action as much as some other people are. But it can still, take a toll on you when we are still in this for, you know monetary purposes, and maybe some of it being philosophical. Um, but it's still, our money for freedom. And if we uh, have false expectations or get our hopes up for a certain kind of outcome, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So just, take a seat, sit back, enjoy the ride, and try to enjoy what you're. I think this is history unfolding, and the true Bitcoiners are doing just that. I think, staying humble, stacking sats, and riding the roller coaster.
Kind of pivoting off that, Ed, too. Neil, I'm curious because I don't actually remember if I've ever heard your origin story, so maybe we can touch on that a little bit later. But I know that I've seen you, at least if not working, participating in the conferences for a while. It seems to me like there is really fertile ground for the next entrance of no corners and retail to come into the space. And I was just curious, compared to previous events, how was Nashville this year, and what kind of sense did you get being there?
Yeah, so I'll do a quick origin story and lead into your question. So I first heard about Bitcoin in 2013. I think this is the origin story. My memory is a little. I'm a little uncertain the first time I heard about Bitcoin, but I'm pretty sure a friend told me he was using it to buy drugs on the internet, and I think he bought like 14 Bitcoin. Had 14 Bitcoin, and they were like $100 each at the time. And so I was curious about it, not to buy drugs, just because I was like, what is, this Bitcoin thing? And maybe I heard of it before, I'm not sure, but I went on Coinbase in September of 2013. I think they started earlier that summer, Coinbase. And I bought Bitcoin. It was $120 or $130 for a Bitcoin. I bought a few Bitcoin, and right after that, it like in the next few months, it like skyrocketed. I think November of 2013, it ran all the way from like, the price I just told you up to like $1,100. It was like one of those crazy kind of like bull markets. I think I probably sold most of it when it was like $500 per Bitcoin. And then I kind of didn't pay attention to it for a few years. And then in 2016 and 2017, I got back into it. I was worried about geopolitical instability in the world. Trump had just entered the US elections. He was a firebrand. Everything seemed kind of like going wild. Regardless of how you think about him, he was definitely going to like upset or shift the political landscape. So I started like buying Bitcoin then as well. Unfortunately, Then I learned about Ethereum and started down like the shitcoin rabbit holes and started like thinking I was going to be this expert trader. After many nights of anxiety and nausea, I decided to give up with the trading. It wasn't for me, and it's not probably for 99% of the people out there, and I would always suggest against it. Um, but at the end of 2017, maybe early 2018, I'm like, I'm done with this stuff. Like, I've had enough. I still had a little Bitcoin left. I mean, I'd have way more if I wasn't, dumb, or ignorant and trading. I'd probably have 5 to 10 times as much Bitcoin if I wasn't doing these things. But as they say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Then like 2019, 2020, I don't know what exactly came to mind, but I started looking at Bitcoin again, and I started listening to Bitcoin podcasts, reading books. One of the people I listen to who is a mentor to me, and I know he's kind of fallen out of favor with a lot of people in the Bitcoin space, is Bitcoin Tina. But he did a really valuable podcast in 2019 with CK, who used to work for Bitcoin Magazine. He doesn't work there anymore. But they did like a 4-part series. It was probably 3 to 4 hours. And I listened to it and it completely blew my mind. Started buying some Bitcoin. Then I would listen to it again and buy more Bitcoin. Then I would find more podcasts and I'd listen to them. And I'm like, I don't have enough Bitcoin. Then I read The Price of Tomorrow, Jeff Booth's book in like early 2020. And I'm like, I don't have enough Bitcoin. And then it's like, holy shit, like most of my entire life's, work, my net worth is now in Bitcoin. I mean, I'm sure you guys know how that is. Once you like fall down the rabbit hole and take the orange pill, you're like, I don't have enough, right?
Oh yeah, you've never got enough, and it always feels that way. Like every time there's like the tiniest price dip too, I'm like, I wish I had money in my bank account. Like it's just everything's all in all the time once you go that head first down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and then so that was like 2020, and then I did, when I really got orange pilled, once all your money's in, it's like, what do you do next, right? It's like, I want to talk to my friends about Bitcoin. Well, as some of you may know, when you first learn about Bitcoin, you're, still a little novice. None of your friends want to listen to you. None of them want to talk to you about Bitcoin. They're all like, yeah, Neil, great, enough of the Bitcoin stuff. And, in 2020, Bitcoin still wasn't that like publicly acceptable. We've seen like, especially this year, the Overton window, shift dramatically where we have like presidential candidates, kind of come out in favor of Bitcoin or advocate for Bitcoin. But I'll get to that after. But back then, no one wanted to talk about Bitcoin, but I was like, somebody must want to talk about Bitcoin. And then I, kind of drifted towards Bitcoin Twitter, and I started talking about Bitcoin. I would find news clips about Bitcoin. I'd post them on Twitter, started growing a little bit of a following. I'm like, oh, this is fun. I never wanted to like work in the Bitcoin space. I just wanted to talk with like-minded people, right? Like, as I said, once you discover this thing, you're like, how does no one see this, right? Like, how am I the only one? I need to talk to more people about it. And kept connecting with people in the space, and then I'd get excited. You'd have like someone in the Bitcoin community reply to something you said, right, who you'd always been listening to, and that's like fun, right? Or someone follows you and you're like, holy shit, right? It's like, or like Jeff Booth, right? I read his book and then one day he's like replying and like following me on Twitter. I'm like, what the hell's going on, right? And I'm not really like the kind of person that's like starstruck or anything. And, as they say in Bitcoin, like slay your heroes. But it was a cool feeling. And so, stuff like that kept happening for me. And then at the beginning of 2021, Clubhouse started becoming a thing in the Bitcoin world. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Clubhouse. But anyone that's not familiar, it was a social media app that kind of picked up during the pandemic. It was an audio only app. You could communicate to each other. And at the time I talked with Corey from Swan reached out to me. Just, he liked the content I was putting out on Twitter. He thought maybe we could work together. We had some conversations. Nothing really went anywhere. And then someone from Swan at the time, this is early 2021, said, "Oh, we're hosting a Clubhouse room." This was before Twitter Spaces. So this was like, the Twitter Spaces before Twitter Spaces. That's what Clubhouse was. And he said, "Yeah, we're starting a Clubhouse room." But back then you needed it was like invite only to get on Clubhouse. So I reached out to Corey and I'm like, "Hey Corey, can I have an invite?" And he's like, "Sure." So he like sent me an invite to Clubhouse. I joined the Clubhouse room, and everyone was just like talking about Bitcoin and their journeys, and new people were asking questions. And then all of a sudden, I'd be on stage, and I would answer people's questions, even though like I still felt out of place at the time, and there were like well-known Bitcoiners in there, like Andreas Antonopoulos would be in a room, or Jimmy Song, American Hodl, all these people who I kind of followed over the years for some guidance and advice myself. But then like people started talking to me. I'm like, holy shit, like this is kind of cool. And then Corey reached out to me again at one point. He's like, "Neil, we don't have anyone on the East Coast that works at Swan," because Swan was a lot smaller back then. And he's like, "I'd love you to, host Clubhouse rooms. Let's call it Cafe Bitcoin. Let's do it every morning, 6 a.m." I'm like, "Nah, how about 6:30 a.m.?" It's like, okay. So I would get up every single day, open up rooms, and this was like height of the bull market, right? Like early 2021, people were like really getting excited. We just made a new all-time high a couple months earlier, right? We broke that 20,000 mark, and there'd be 200 to 300 people in the room every day. As soon as I would open the room, within 10 to 15 minutes. I'm sure Patrick remembers. Patrick is on stage and he used to join all the time. But it was wild. And we'd have like people from all throughout the industry come in there because, like I said, the Twitter Spaces wasn't a thing yet. We even convinced Michael Saylor to join a room once. That was cool. That was like on a weekend. I wasn't even like on the clock at that point for Swan. Doing contract work, and Saylor just like popped into a room one day, and right away there was like 1,500 people that showed up, when it was normally like 100, 200 people, and he answered questions for an hour, so that was really cool. And then while I was doing Clubhouse, Joe Carlasari, I'm sure some of you are familiar with him in the space, reached out to me about doing a podcast, and other people had reached out to me before, but when Joe reached out to me, I was like, super knowledgeable guy. He could talk about certain subject matters that I'm, not specialized in. I think this could really work. So we started a podcast called Inside Bitcoin. We did that for a year and a half. That kind of ran its course through I think March 2023 was our last episode. But that was really the first time I was like public facing in the space where people like saw my face. Because even on Clubhouse, I had like an avatar to like profile. So that was like me first, like really getting out there. So I did that. And like I said, early 2022 was merchant apparel. And then mid 2023, I was talking to Corey about, maybe doing something full time at Swan. And then that end October 1st, I left my career as a CPA. While I was doing all those other things, by the way, the Clubhouse rooms, the merch company, promoting conferences, I was still full time CPA tax season. But then eventually, October of last year, October 1st, I took a full time job with Swan. I was head of brand engagement. I led the social media team. I ran our affiliate program. Did a bunch of other, helped guide a bunch of other marketing efforts, and that was a lot of fun. And then obviously, as I, started off the podcast, unfortunately, a little over a month ago now, Swan had to lay off staff. I was included in that. But, I wish Swan the best. I'm still in contact with people at Swan. I still hope they all do the best. And I hope everyone who isn't with Swan now, finds something for them. And yeah, that's where I'm at now. That was a long way to get to your original questions, which I believe was, how is the Nashville conference compared to other conferences? So the reason I kind of wanted to do that wind up was because the first conference I actually attended was Bitcoin 2021 in Miami. Again, like I said, I hadn't been public facing in the space really until 2020, where I started kind of putting myself out there and talking to people. So 2021 was the first conference in Miami, and that was a crazy conference. There were like 15,000 people. I finally got to meet people in person. It was very like thrown together quickly because I believe that was the year. It was so 2020 was, there was supposed to be a Bitcoin conference in Los Angeles, but it was shut down because of the pandemic. Then in 2021, they're like, we're going to move this to Miami because Florida didn't give a shit about anything. And, you know, Florida never gives a shit about anything. So they're like, yeah, have it here. So it was done in Miami. It was cool. It was a lot of fun. Then 2022, I think they had like over 20,000 people. It still had the momentum of the bull market, even though we were kind of on the decline after the bull market. No one really knew at the time that we were entering, you know, this long bear market. But, you know, things kind of like died down the past couple of years at conferences. Things were getting slower. I think during the pandemic and, you know, as it was ending, people were so tired of being locked up literally and figuratively in their houses that they wanted to get out and meet other Bitcoiners. Like I said, that are like-minded, had similar values. So the conferences like really did really well then. But you know, then I think when the bear market came, you know, it's hard to like get that momentum. People still came in like 2022, a little bit in 2023, but I think a lot of people were getting conference fatigue, right? Like you keep going to all these conferences. I think this year there were like 50 conferences like worldwide that were even like, I saw someone put a list together, and obviously, you know, that's an insane amount, and you know, most people aren't going to like, you know, even a third of those, right? Or even a quarter of them or 20%. But I love the momentum. What I saw in Nashville was like this new energy. It's almost like Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't like this strange, weird thing used by criminals anymore. You know, you do have the FUD. And, you know, yesterday we had an article, Bitcoiners are psychopaths again, right? Revisiting a study or a new study. There was one in 2022 where, you know, Bitcoiners are psychopaths. And, you know, some of us are psychopaths. I mean, all you have to do is like be on Bitcoin Twitter for a little amount of time.
Embrace it, right?
Right. Embrace the psychopath. I actually have a funny a t-shirt, or a funny story behind that t-shirt. It actually, when that's the New York Post said Bitcoiner study shows Bitcoiners are psychopaths, that's when that t-shirt first emerged. So it was nice to be able to like see that meme come back, because that was like one of the first shirts that kind of did well for us because of that viral moment. But yeah, this conference with all the politicians, with Trump, RFK, the Overton window has shifted in terms of acceptability. It's not weird to have Bitcoin anymore. Like people don't look at you funny. Almost everyone in the US, at least, that I encounter has heard of the word Bitcoin, right? Like that was a big step. Like 5 years ago, like you would ask, oh, if you heard of Bitcoin, what's Bitcoin, right? You rarely hear that anymore. People might not understand it, or they might still think it's a scam, some people, or they might not know what it's about. But it's a lot different. Most people, they've heard of it. And when I tell them, you know, I do things in the industry, you know, I shit post basically for a living on Twitter every day, then they're interested, right? Then they want to learn. And yeah, it's great. Like now people want to learn. You know, I don't try to convince anyone anymore. And that's partially because, you know, you kind of get burnt out trying to convince people over the years, but also just because so many people are now coming to me and to everyone else in the space, like, tell me about this Bitcoin thing. What's going on? And not only did that shift with all the politicians, but with the ETFs, right? That gave it like this like Wall Street legitimacy. Oh, I could buy it in my Fidelity account, or well, not Vanguard because they're, you know, morons, but you know, I think now you could do it in a Morgan Stanley account and other retirement accounts, right? It's like, well, if you know, Larry Fink is saying it and this guy is saying it, then it must be legit. It's here to stay, even though, you know, us up here, we knew it was legit and here to stay. It just took the rest of the world a little time. So yeah, to your question, the conference was awesome. I cannot wait for the BTC Bitcoin Magazine's conference in Vegas. I think it will probably be the largest Bitcoin conference ever. That would be my guess, just because Vegas is like a crazy town. It's built for conferences, especially if we're still in a bull market, especially if we have politicians who are pro Bitcoin, like coming out again in favor of it. I really think it's going to be bananas, and I'm already looking forward to it.
That's awesome, Neil. Thank you so much. There's tons of things in there that I wanted to even just touch on too. It's funny. I think I was talking with some of the guys from Bull Bitcoin, from Pablo over there, but going off this idea of just evangelizing, that I've kind of come to the conclusion, because we all do it, right? You first learn about Bitcoin, and then you just got to go out there and you got to tell all your friends. And my going theory is that that evangelizing phase that we all go through, it's not for us to spread the word or to actually, bring people into Bitcoin. I think it's just a filter mechanism to see in our circle who close to us already kind of aligns ideologically with values and is already kind of attracted to that sort of thing. Because it was, again, I'm sure you maybe had a similar experience, but I was just shocked by how much lack of interest there was for people that I expected there to be. And then I got interest from friends and things I didn't anticipate, who ended up getting a stronger relationship and a better bond following it. Also, I had no idea that you started Cafe Bitcoin over on Clubhouse. I'd missed that. I think when I first started listening, I think it was Tomer was the one running the rooms there on the spaces here too. And it's as a prior fan, I am saddened by the loss of Inside Bitcoin, because I think that was my Sunday afternoon go-to podcast that I was listening to while making food for the kids in the kitchen. It seems like you really kind of just fell into these marketing positions, like you just have a natural knack for it, eh?
Yeah, like I said, I never tried to get a position, was never trying to work in the Bitcoin world. I just wanted to talk to people about Bitcoin and be passionate about it and advocate for it. And all these good things started happening for me because of that. And maybe that's why it happened for me, because I wasn't trying, right? Sometimes in life, when you're not, it doesn't look like you have like an agenda or trying to like get work out of someone or get into a position, like things happen. I'm not saying that can't work for other people. Like if you see a job and you want it, like go for it, apply for it. It kind of worked out for me. I was kind of hesitant. People would ask me, why don't you work in the space, this, that. And like I said, Bitcoin was a passion for me. So I didn't want it to become work. So I was very skeptical of making the leap over. I finally did after years in the space, like doing it full time, anyways, like as a full time job. But I always caution people, they get really excited when they learn about Bitcoin. Then they want to, work for a Bitcoin company. And my usual advice is like, don't work for a Bitcoin company yet. Really evaluate what your long term goal is. If you are more of a marketing type of person, I would say build your own personal brand first, right? Build that brand as best as you can, because you never know. You go and work for a company and then you leave that company, they lay you off or something happens, right? Like you want to be able to have your personal brand to take with you. And like I said, I love Swan and I love the people that work there. But I was Neil before there. I was Neil from Swan, right? And a lot of people didn't even know I worked at Swan, because I went to work at Swan. I put my head down. I did what I had to do. Tried to like spread the Bitcoin message. Um, and I would just caution people, like, I know you get excited about Bitcoin right off the bat. And if you see a good fit for yourself, I'm not saying you shouldn't jump on it, but especially in more like marketing type positions where you can market yourself, like do that first, right? Like be your own advocate, grow your own brand, and then go work for another. Then you could work for another company, and if things work out for them, great. If they don't, like you still have your own brand and your own assets, whether that be a podcast or a merchant apparel company or whatever. You sell artwork, or you write books, or anything. There's a place for everyone in the space. That's really what I like about Bitcoin. I feel like, unlike the fiat world, where like I feel like the pie is growing in the Bitcoin world. When more people come into the Bitcoin world, that helps me, right? I'm not like, I don't see it as competing with them. I see them as they're helping me. Like if they want to start getting into Bitcoin and spreading the word about Bitcoin, that's going to help, my Bitcoin position and my Bitcoin businesses. So I don't really get like, sometimes when people are confrontational, I understand like a natural competitiveness that some people have. And I have that too. I want to be the best. But there's enough room for everyone in the space.
No, I completely agree. And it's funny. There's two things that I picked up on there that we were kind of talking. It's almost like looking at branding and marketing, almost from like the sovereign individual thesis. It's like, no, you build yourself up, and then you can go to basically, instead of moving to different nation states, you can go to different companies and bring that with you. But you always have it with you. You keep that identity and you keep that value, and so it can't be stripped from you. Should things go awry, right? Should something go wrong, or you just find that it's not the place for you and you want to go elsewhere, you have that. And then additionally too, just, the idea of more Bitcoiners in this space, making things better for all of us. Yeah, it's network effects, right? It's just that constant network effect that I'm so excited to see more people coming in and doing media and podcasts and different companies and devices. Like, the more we coalesce here, the more value it has. And it's just that exponential function that's going to keep building off it. There was something else too that I just wanted to add briefly, talking about interacting with different people that you see in the space. That in my brief time here and experience here too, people have been unbelievably receptive if you're just polite and nice and reach out to them. And it's been such a welcoming space. And every now and then, like, you do get those, it's kind of fun to get those little kind of starstruck moments. And there was one for me that I had to take a screenshot and send it to my wife, because Ben Perrin, BTC Sessions, is co-founder of Bitcoin Mentor. And so I was setting up the YouTube channel just so we had a place to kind of put the videos and put stuff out there. And the first follow I had on the YouTube channel that I created was BTC Sessions. And that just warmed my heart. It's like, oh man, I've been watching this guy forever and he's my first follow. Now, yes, I get it's the company that he's running, but still, it was just an amazing little moment. Pat, you've been around a lot. You've been listening here. What are you thinking?
Well, I really enjoyed listening to Neil's story because I see a lot of parallels with a lot of people in Bitcoin. But really quickly, I just wanted to touch on, like, if have I had any starstruck moments? I can think of two, maybe three starstruck moments I've had. Where one of them was back in 2015. I went to a conference and a friend of mine introduced me to Roger Ver. And in 2015, Roger Ver was Bitcoin Jesus, so that was kind of a starstruck moment for me. And then and also meeting Adam Back. I've met Adam Back a few times, but I met him again at Bitcoin Miami. I believe this was in 22. And I said, hey, I got a video of you, Adam Back, from 2013. I'd like to send it to you. And I was like, but I can't send it to you because you're you turned off your DMs. He's like, oh, let me follow you on Twitter and then you can send it to me. I was like, okay, that was kind of cool. But one of the things that Neil was talking about was Clubhouse. Now, the thing about those early I don't know if it was early, but it was early for me, those early Clubhouse days in beginning of 2021. The interesting thing about me was it seemed like it was the first time, for lack of a better term, because I hate the term Bitcoin maximalism, but it seemed like it was the time when Bitcoin maximalism kind of went mainstream, because a lot of times when we were Bitcoin only on Twitter, we were kind of outnumbered by all these bots who were out there pushing every single shitcoin and saying that we were the grandma who couldn't, or we were Peter Schiff because we couldn't understand that crypto was the future and Bitcoin was just the first, crypto. And we were trying to make the case on Twitter and we were being drowned out by all these bots. But the thing about Clubhouse was that when I went on Clubhouse back then and Neil was in those rooms and Bitcoin Tina and American Hodl, even Fluffy Pony, the Monero guy, was in there a bunch. It seemed like being Bitcoin only was the mainstream position in those rooms, because we obviously had shitcoiners come in there every now and again, but it's different when you're just typing on Twitter versus having to actually off the cuff and just think on your feet to come up with a conversation, with a response to every single thing that comes up. So it seemed like the people who are pushing altcoins were just kind of completely clueless and they had no idea what they were saying, and they sounded like it too, like they just didn't sound intelligent, which is a lot easier to hide on Twitter than it is if you're actually talking in person. Another thing that Neil mentioned that I thought of, which is a parallel to what a lot of people in Bitcoin have gone through, which is you kind of, when he started his business, he kind of taught himself to learn, a little bit of graphic design to help his business. And it's a lot of Bitcoiners do stuff like that. We kind of, if we're from an economic background, maybe we're not as technical. We kind of do a deep dive and we try to learn about, cryptography, and we try to learn about SHA-256, and we try to learn about how mining works and put together a mining rig. And also, if you're more technically inclined, you may do a deep dive on Austrian economics to try to, find out the sound money principles. So I think it's a parallel that a lot of Bitcoiners, it's like, if we don't know something, we'll Google it, we'll learn it, we'll ask people, we'll get help from people to try to figure out how this SHA-256 algorithm works and why it's good for mining and why it's important for mining. And then also Neil, who said he's a CPA by trade. By the way, Neil, I'm going to DM you to ask about, how do I study for the CPA exam in case I want to ever become a CPA. Just kidding, Neil. I won't do that to you. But yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times we say that, we want to do work that's exciting, but CPA work is not really, I wouldn't classify it as being exciting work, but it's important work. And it's good to focus on work that is important and is not necessarily something that is super exciting, but it allows you to make enough money that you can then, use that extra productivity that you have to invest in passion projects and in exciting projects like Cafe Bitcoin, like FOMO21, things like that. So I just, those were a few things that Neil touched on, which I thought is a very close parallel to what a lot of Bitcoiners go through.
Yeah, and just to I totally agree with basically everything Patrick just said. And just to go back to what you were saying about people being welcoming in the space, I've always, 95% of the time, I've had really good experiences with Bitcoiners. There are a few, I'm not going to say who, that, are well known, but are a little more ornery when you meet them. But, not everyone's for everyone, and that's okay. But I still think still in the phase of Bitcoin's adoption where you can get that access, but I think that window may be closing. It's just getting so big, the space, and with the institutional adoption, with the how big the conferences are getting, the ETFs. Um, I do. I wouldn't say it's a worry, more just a reality that being able to get that close contact with some of the people you watch podcasts of, and quote unquote thought leaders, I hate even saying that, or like influencers, right? It's going to be like it'll be a little more challenging connecting with them as the space gets larger and larger, but that's kind of just natural for any growing industry. But it does mean that probably the industry is doing well. um, so yeah, I think everyone, for the most part, most people are welcoming. And if you want to do something in the space, like, try to do it. You'll see people say, "Oh, another Bitcoin podcast, blah blah blah." Well, come up with a Bitcoin podcast that has a different spin on it, right? Like, there's always, someone has a new idea, and don't get discouraged. It's, again, if you're passionate and you about your idea, it shouldn't be about, I want to make a lot of money off this. It just be, I'm passionate. It'll provide value to people, and then if it's a good idea, it'll take off on its own.
No, I completely agree. Just a quick reminder for anybody in the audience, if you want to come up and chat with us, or you have a question, technical, broad, whatever it is, Bitcoin related, please feel free to come up here and join us. We'd love to have you. Neil, I'm curious if there's, just pivoting for a second, if there's anything in the Bitcoin space that has your attention right now, any projects or companies or things that you think are kind of exciting or at least interesting. I mentioned it briefly before you hopped in, and I got kind of technically kicked out at the beginning of the spaces, but I've been watching just the Fedi app and Obi and the team and what they're doing there. And I'm really curious to see how that progresses. And yeah, just wondering if there's anything that's got your attention at the moment.
FOMO21. No, I'm just kidding. My attention, like I said, I just had that experience with Swan. So I've been like head down, kind of like figuring out what my next role will be, and talking to a lot of people in the space at the conference. So, it's been hard for me to keep, there's so many things going on in the Bitcoin world. It's hard for me to choose where to allocate my time these days. And with any growing industry, this is a cop out answer. This is a way for like me not to answer your question, but it's the truth. It's like with any growing industry, for every like 100 new applications and ideas, only like maybe, I don't know, 1 to 5 will be around 5 years from now, right? It's just like so hard. And am I going to like invest a lot of my time into learning about, startups and initial projects if I'm not investing in them and if I'm not working on them? I just don't allocate too much of my time. And if anything worthwhile comes along, I usually hear about it from somebody. So I'm not the best person right now on the latest like advancements in the space. I do, I'll listen to a podcast here and there. I hear Jeff Boot talking about like his venture firm, Ego Death Capital, I think it's called, and he talks about, I think they're invested in Fedi and all these other things, and that's really encouraging to know like other people are taking up this mantle. But for me, I was never going to be a cryptographer or computer engineer. Like for me, it was more about helping people get from 0 to 1 when it came to Bitcoin. Getting them to that first leap and letting them get from 1 to 100 on their own. And that's what I've like continued to try to do, and that's where I focus my attention mostly. But I'm open to learning about new things when we see some progress, for sure. What about you? What you said Fedi is really interesting to you?
Fedi's been, yeah, I think Fedi is super interesting. Just the kind of idea of coalescing everything all in one app based around communities. And in particular for me too. So I'm up in Canada. And so I still remember the kind of trucker protests and then everything that was going on with them. And I'm really interested in something like Fedi for potentially being able to get funds where you'd want to in a non-seizable, easy way. And I think that might have some real power if there's potentially, we'll say, less friendly environments down the road. And then additionally, like lately, I've been loving the Aqua wallet. I've been onboarding people with that and kind of using that to introduce to them to Liquid and Layer 2. And so even, kind of on that note too, with the 0 to 1 that you're doing with some people, do you have a favorite wallet? Do you have a favorite kind of go-to podcast video, something that you share with them to try and get them interested and onboarded?
It kind of depends on who they are, what I'll kind of recommend to them. Obviously, if like super technical person, like a cold card will probably work for you if you're one to like dive in the weeds. But I think the Trezor, the Jade are like perfectly acceptable for like 99% of people. So I'm kind of device agnostic. I think some people get a little hung up on it too much, but to each their own. It's your value and worth that you're storing. You have to figure out like what kind of comfort level you need and what kind of security level you need. And Bitcoiners, are some of the most paranoid people on the planet for good reason. So I don't, I don't hold anything against anyone when it comes to like wallets. In terms of like go to learning resources, I still recommend like some of the things that, like I said, that got me kind of like over the edge, and that was like 2019. I say listen to 2019 Bitcoin Tina, ignore 2024 Bitcoin Tina, and listen to those podcasts. Price of Tomorrow, it's a great book because it doesn't really talk about Bitcoin, but it lets you kind of understand how like technology is moving at an exponential pace. So I really love that one. A new There's like a new intro book I've been recommending to people. Admittedly, I haven't read it, but I really have a lot of faith in the person who wrote it, and a lot of people have been raving about it. It's called Intro to Bitcoin. It's by Erin Malone. Me and Erin started talking probably through Clubhouse and then Twitter years ago. She was one of like the first people that was running like a profitable Lightning node like back in the day. She's a superstar. And her book, you could buy the physical copy on Amazon. We also sell that ebook on FOMO21. So if you go on there today, shameless plug, Intro to Bitcoin. I think it's like $7 or $8, and you could use the 20% off discount code. There you go. It'll be even cheaper. But we sell some books on there too. But I recommend the Intro to Bitcoin book to her. The Intro to Bitcoin book that she wrote. Obviously, BTC sessions. Anytime someone, if I say to someone, a Trezor would be good for you, or a cold card, or whatever, I say go watch a BTC sessions video on it, like before you come to me. because he's really, really good, really detailed. And what am I going to say that he hasn't come across over the years? He's such a valuable resource to the space, and I'm super appreciative for him because I've watched some of his videos to learn. I think I probably watched one of his videos maybe to set up an Umbrel back in the day, right? So I run like my own node. I think I did that like 3 years ago. Yeah. So watch his videos too. It's good stuff.
There are a lot of great educators that are already in the space. I mean, BTC Sessions is great. I totally agree with you on a lot of that stuff. I'll have to check out that book that you recommended, Intro to Bitcoin. I personally actually haven't even heard of it. So I'm always looking for stuff to hand to people that are a little green with Bitcoin and it's easy to digest. For the longest time, I've been using the Bitcoin Standard. If someone wants something economically based, Price of Tomorrow, I find, is a great book, one of my personal favorite Bitcoin books, and it really isn't even about Bitcoin. And I find that also helps because it gives people kind of the preface of the problem and the environment that we're dealing with in the world. And yeah, there's just lots of great resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So that Intro to Bitcoin book, I think it came out like 3 or 4 months ago. So that's probably why you shouldn't have heard of it.
Gotcha.
Of it. But yeah, the ebook, like I said, you can purchase the ebook on our site. It's a little cheaper than Amazon, but if you want like a physical copy or audiobook, Amazon will be the place to go. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just found it and posted it up there in the nest.
Oh, sweet. Nice. I don't see it yet. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Sorry, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, so that's the link on Amazon. If you want the ebook, FOMO21, because it's cheaper. But on Amazon, you'll be able to get the audiobook or the physical copy, I believe. So.
And before we kind of round out the top of the hour here, Pat, did you have anything you wanted to add to the conversation? Thoughts, questions, or comments?
No, nothing. I think you guys touched on everything that I was thinking about. So yeah, it's great to have Neil here, and great to hear his story. I see a lot of parallels with his story with a lot of other people's, including myself.
Yeah,
awesome.
Patrick's a great guy. I think it's the first time I met you, Patrick, in Mexico in person.
Oh, you know what? That's right. So I was actually speaking at a conference in Mexico run by my friend Ugly Old Goat, and Tone Vase was a speaker there, and Juan Galt, and a few, I think Jimmy Song was there too. And then Neil was going to be in California. And then so I talked him and a friend of ours to come down and hang out with us. So it was really cool to see Neil there hanging out with Tone and all the speakers at the conference.
We kind of like crashed the conference, right? Patrick was great enough to like invite us, and he's like, "Oh, just come, it's fine." So we drove from LA down to Ensenada, Mexico, and I drove with our friend Hillary. She's not really that involved with the space anymore, but we drove down to Ensenada, and the first night I got there, we came to the hotel, and it was like Patrick, Tone Vase, Alex Svetsky, a few other people like you mentioned.
Giacomo was there, I believe.
Playing poker. And I sat down. I'm like, oh, like a seat opened up. I'm like, oh, could I play or something? Like, yeah. And I didn't know any of these guys. Like, I knew them from like, interviews, podcasts, whatever, but I didn't know any of you really personally. Maybe you, Patrick, just from Clubhouse. But I'd never met anyone in person. And by the end of the night, I took all their money. I did really well. And at the end of the night, Tone, he looked at me because I just like took a few $100 off the table, and he's like, "So Neil, who are you?" He just took my money. Who are you? And him and I talked, and then had a friendship with Tone after that, and I've been able to go to unconfiscatable the past couple of years, and relationships just form that way, right? Just put yourself out there, show up. You show up, you'll grow a network in the Bitcoin world.
No, that's awesome advice. Half the battle is just showing up and being present. Well, awesome. Thank you, Neil. I want to be cognizant and respectful of your time. Really appreciate you hanging out today. I'm excited to see what's next on the horizon for you. So please, whenever you get some stuff worked out, come back and share us. I'm very interested to see how that goes. And especially if you start doing any more of that like personal brand stuff that you were talking about, if you start up any new shows or podcasts or hosting spaces, please hit us up. Where should people go to check out your stuff? Can you give us a handoff in that respect?
Sure. No, thank you so much for having me. You guys have been great. Just the communication's been great. I appreciate everything. So yeah, you could just follow me here on Twitter at Neil Jacobs. I mean, I'm on other socials too. There's a lot of scammers, so be careful. I'll never message anyone first. That's like a 1 in a million thing. And yeah, follow me here on Twitter. Follow FOMO21, which is should be close to the top right for you. Or maybe the second row, FOMO21, follow the handle. Like I said, if anyone buys merch today, use the code MENTOR today only. You'll get 20% off anything there. And I just appreciate everyone that showed up. I appreciate Bitcoiners. It's really special to be here right now at like this point in history. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the next few years bring. And I'll definitely come back on if you guys will have me. And hopefully I'll have my own life a little more sorted out. I have some good potential leads, but still working on some things. But thank you again.
Absolutely. And yeah, I can speak for all of us. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate you spending your time with us. And yeah, I definitely think we're in a very pivotal moment, maybe year or two in Bitcoin. I think that we're going to look back on now, and it's going to be, historic times. The ETF and the halving just happened. Yeah, I think there's a lot of momentum, and might be a little quiet right now, but I think we're gonna see some fruits uh, show their face. Yeah, guys, make sure to give Neil and FOMO21 a follow. And I'm gonna just say again, make sure you use that code mentor on the shop, get 20% off.
Yeah,
We
today
do
only.
this space
Oh, and give
today
these
only.
guys
Correct.
give these guys a follow too. Live free BTC. I gotta follow you guys. Hold on, I can't say it.
All good. Thank you.
So now I'm following you guys too. Give them a follow as well.
Yeah, follow us. Get notifications for when we're doing the spaces. We do them every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks again for coming up to speak. And I'm gonna keep posted on what you're doing. I'm looking forward to any new developments that you have in your career and Bitcoin journey. And if you want to check out Bitcoin Mentor, go to bitcoinmentor.io, and you can email us or book a free one-on-one session. We could help you self-custody your Bitcoin, run a node, anything Bitcoin related. Hope everyone has a great day. Take care, guys.